Experience the future of packaging and processing up close and in action. Explore groundbreaking innovations, engage with hands-on solutions, and connect with the experts transforming the industry. See how these advancements can revolutionize your products, production lines, and business. It all starts here. Don't miss out. Register today at packexpolasvegas.com/unpackedpod. You're listening to Unpacked with PMMI, where we share the latest packaging and processing industry insights, research, and innovations to help you advance your business. Hello there, and welcome to another edition of Unpacked with PMMI. I'm your host, Sean Riley. Every year, PMMI member meetings, like the annual meeting and the Executive Leadership Conference, bring together world-class speakers to address challenges facing the modern business. On this episode, we hear from culture expert and Culture-topia, yeah, I nailed it, author Jason Young on the crucial role that culture plays in staving off any remnants from the Great Resignation. He explains his definition of culture and what he feels is good company culture based off of his previous stops at Southwest Airlines, Walt Disney, 3M, and Cisco Systems. After you listen, you'll probably want to head over to pmmi.org to register for the upcoming Executive Leadership Conference in San Antonio, April 16th through the 18th. So with all the fancy introductions out of the way, we're happy to have Jason Young on the podcast. Welcome to the pod, Jason.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So you are our culture guru, I will say, for the annual meeting this year. Culture-topia was the book you wrote, and it's a topic that's kind of talked about constantly now, particularly with the Great Resignation and a lot of changes that came out of the shutdown from COVID-19 and stuff like that. So I guess to kind of kick this off for people that weren't here or sort of as an extension of it is, I guess, how do you define culture and what defines a good culture?
Well, Culture-topia is just a word I made up. I was looking for a word that when you did search for it, you got no hits. Yeah. So it's kind of a weird word, but it suits the topic. And culture, I believe, stems from your value system, and so values are going to help shape culture. Culture is really what's going to, I believe, is what's going to shape the behavior and ideally foster teamwork. And I use a term called relational coordination. Mm-hmm. It's just a way of functioning together that's a little more deliberate than saying, I'm on a team. It's more deliberate about how I'm interacting with my boss, my coworkers, my vendors, my suppliers, and in this coordinated way. And that's what's going to, help to form this freedom, because ultimately in culture, the idea would be to try to keep people's tension as low as possible so you can raise performance. Right. And so how do I create an environment where we have this freedom? And I always tell the joke that I was working with a lady in Austin, Texas, and I said, "How many people work here?" She said, "About half." It was just one of those things because culturally, and that's what happened. In the last few years, we've just had like you described as the Great Resignation, and now people do not want to go back into the workforce. And, that separation can be a culture killer unless you're very deliberate about connection. And I know some people are, well, you have to be here at least one day a week, or you got to be. I don't know the answer to that. I've seen some very successful remote employees. I have, right. And I've probably done 45 Zoom meetings, presentations, and it's not my preference. I'd much rather be live, but and sometimes we just have to make that work. And so the culture, being more deliberate about facilitating those connections, even if it's just a connection via Zoom or via a podcast or whatever it might be. But I think that's a big part of it, and managing the tension. And if I can keep, like I said, people tension low, my performance or the relational coordination improves, and that's what helps to facilitate, in my opinion, it helps facilitate a healthy culture.
Yeah, And it's interesting when you said that it was a joke, but I know that's actually even a term now with the quiet quitting, where people aren't quitting literally, they're just, they shut down and don't do exactly what they're supposed to be doing. And I have all these other sort of culture questions, but I always find things from once I start talking to someone that are like maybe of interest. How do you go off into this? I'm going to be the culture guy and speak about culture. Like, how does that evolve?
Interesting. I learned after doing a stint as manager of customer service for Los Angeles International Airport. Okay. I realized that I did not want to be an airport manager. I wanted to be a people developer. And so I transferred back into our leadership development center and did some fantastic work around customer service initiatives and leadership development things. But I got, at that point where I needed to make it, I knew I didn't want to go back to airport management. Mm-hmm. There wasn't really a career path that made sense in the people development because, at the time I was there, now they have huge, learning development.
Right. You were ahead of your time.
A little bit. So, I left and the first client I had was Hawaiian Airlines, and they invited me to come over for 1 week a month and do customer service training. And, I was like, oh, I can do this for a living. And then I happened to be I was really just doing training and development. And around some of those fundamentals that Southwest is known for, leadership development, supervisor effectiveness, corporate culture, all of those. I just began to dabble in that with different companies that were hiring me. And I also had some, certifications like Myers-Briggs and some other things like that,
right.
that people would, want me to come in and facilitate. And then I was doing a session in Vegas, and a lady named Karen Cheney came up to me afterwards. She goes, I think you're very entertaining. She goes, if you could write a book, I could book you as a speaker. And I'm like, really? And it wasn't really, I hadn't made that adjustment over to this culture because I knew I wanted to write about culture.
Okay.
Because my time at Southwest, and Southwest is known for having this great culture. And so then I was thinking, okay, I want to be about culture. What's a word I can come up with? And then I just began to lay out, okay, who are companies that I think have great cultures, and how can I document that and put that all in this flow that blends in with this whole idea of the Southwest culture, and it's really about just creating an environment where people can do their best work. You want high performance and high fulfillment all in the same space, and I think culture is what accomplishes that.
Interesting. So it was kind of a mix of an organic thing / something that you sort of thought, this is the path to go. That just sparked my interest as something of, I can't imagine like you think I'm going to be the culture guy one day. But as it being at a place like Southwest where it's so important, I would understand that's.
Well, it's a good door opener.
Yeah.
Because they still do it well.
Right.
And if you want to have a culture of fun, allow your employees to have fun. If you want to have some cultures just want to make money. I get that too, but just define it, and that way people can model the behavior that's going to help them get results in that area.
So I want to go into this, I guess, sort of two ways. But how do you get people who are already on board, they're on the team, or they're working for you, that just see it as a paycheck? How do you get them on board to your, culture, or to, more of a collaborative environment?
Yeah, ideally, you want people to not just trading hours for dollars. Right? You want to, and so, defining, that because at Southwest, not everybody tells jokes.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you're not funny, don't try to be. If you can't sing, don't try to sing your announcements. And so it's just giving people that freedom. But we would lean towards entertaining our guests or entertaining our customers and do the right thing for our customers, whatever form that takes with that individual personality. And because you don't want everybody to be the same. It'd be irritating.
Yeah.
And then there's people that take it too far, and they're inappropriate. And so there's that balance. But if you have a much more conservative company, I was doing work with this insurance company. They were not, they didn't want to be funny. They wanted to write policies, and that's what but we were able to define that, right? I'll give you another example. I was working with a technology company, and they had about 400 engineers. Well, their culture was that if you're at your desk working, that means your job's safe. So they would spend 12 hours of unproductive time, but they're logging in that, oh yeah, because somehow it got out into that group of engineers that they're going to let go of the bottom 10%, and that was never the intent. I talked to the director of that division, and he says just they got this culture idea that if I'm at my desk, then I'm going to be busy, and that the whole engineering, the whole culture became that. And so, but we worked with it and said, okay, we want to look at productivity, not just time spent. And so then they became more of a productive culture as opposed to just trading hours for dollars.
So I guess that says it from the aspect of the people that are working there. But I guess how do you like you refer to culture almost as the soul of an organization, and the soul of the organization is kind of there and already been established before a lot of people are brought on board and stuff like that. How can you, like, you're in there, how do you change that if you're not one of the people running the company, or how can you push that change or create that change? And then I guess at the same time, if there is resistance from the top, how do you convince leadership, or how do leaders adapt if they're not willing to change that soul?
And again, I think defining up front what you want that to look like. I mean, if you want to have a fun culture, you want to encourage people to do those things. Southwest wanted to have an on-time culture. So for every quarter of perfect attendance you have, they give you 2 tickets that you can give to anybody. Mm-hmm. Right? Are you supposed to come to work on time? Yes.
Yeah.
But because they wanted to reinforce the on-time culture, they put an incentive in place to do that. I was working with a car dealership, and they just had all these coupons, like Walmart gift cards, and they were just rewarding people on the spot, and it made people, for being on time and for putting in extra effort, and they began to see the shift in the way people, they look forward to coming to work. They look forward to hoping that they are getting recognized, and so I think there's a lot of techniques you can use, but the way I say it is, I said, just find people doing things right. It's so easy to get critical on our key performance metrics.
Yeah.
We forget that most of the time people are doing things right.
Right.
We don't go out of the way to recognize that as much as I think we should. And I think it makes a big difference on morale. I think it makes a difference on people's willingness to engage. And sometimes people just have a rough time. Mm-hmm. And that's why you have employee assistance programs and counseling, and and so you want to be able to recognize that too, and say, hey, how can I help you? And sometimes people have a bad day.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it. It's kind of typecast as a manufacturing. I'll speak for in general, whether we're packaging and processing, but manufacturing is typically a traditional industry. It's it used to be more, it's gotten bigger, but it used to be more like family businesses that grew out. But it's stodgy is not the word I want to use, but conservative is the word you use. That might be a tougher culture to change, just because it is an established thing that has worked for decade after decade after decade. And so how do you break out of that? For the first time, PMMI members and Pack Expo exhibitors can gain a true insight into the competitive marketing landscape within the packaging and processing industries. See real data from PMMI Media Group campaigns on engagement from validated, verified end users, including the amount of captured leads and even how Pack Expo booth visits align with pre-show marketing. You'll also get a full view of campaign strategies in market across all 12 months for competitors in your product category, with variations by channel. This kind of intel has never been available before. Request your custom competitive analysis report now at pmmi.media/CAR. That's pmmi.media/CAR.
Well, if you need to break out of it, I mean, if you're productive and the operation's running like you want it to run, and you have employee retention, and there might not be anything
That's a very good point.
If you really want to adjust the environment, I've seen teams that, independent of their boss, just say, hey, we want to have more fun at work. And so it's a little grassroots effort that happens. And sometimes that spreads and, other times it doesn't. But, I think just getting agreement, whether it be a department, ideally it would be at the top. There's going to be this agreement on, how we want to operate. But I've seen companies that write these beautiful mission statements and about how they want to treat their employees and about how great it's going to be, and then they don't do any of it. And all that does is mistrust and disappointment. And so I was working with this one company. I said, you need to take that one off the wall and put one up that says we're bitter, tired, and frustrated, because that's what they were. They were
right.
And then, and that just can just eat at the employee group, I think, and in a negative way. It just can bring that morale down. And if you're on a team and you feel like there's a no-win, there's not an option, there's no way out.
Right.
Then people are probably going to find a way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's you said it, taking down this, but I can see, people go to an annual meeting or a leadership conference or something like that, and they see a culture expert. And like you said, on Monday, there's a sign put up that says, all the things that you're talking about.
You're going to be happy no matter what.
Exactly. You're going to smile, and this is going to be the greatest place ever. But like you said, if that's not happening, all it's doing is increasing, the tension more than it already was. Okay, I guess to kind of, I'm interested in this, and I'm sure it's something, or I hope it's something that you've come across to kind of put a button on this. But do you have any? We're hearing a lot, and I'm not pinholing any generations, but like as the younger workforce is becoming, the baby boomers are moving out, and we're getting a younger workforce that just by definition does not do things the way the other generations have. People can complain about it. People can say that's not the way it should be. It's neither here nor there. This is how they do things. And do you have like tips or tools or ways to integrate that into your culture where that doesn't become, because it breeds resentment between the different groups, the different generations. And I don't know, as far as I know, maybe this is something that happened with, 30, 40 years ago with different generations coming. I don't know. It just seems like such a hot button topic versus an opportunity that it kind of should be, that we're bringing in new people, new ideas.
I think we got to be more creative. I was working with a restaurant company, and their average age of their employees, 17, 18. And they were having trouble getting people covering their shifts. And I didn't think of this idea. I thought it was brilliant, though. They started assigning a scope of work to a group of servers, and they had to decide who's covering what. And they just would text each other. And so it took the scheduling and put it in the hands of that, which is what they want.
Right. I was going to say, and they probably appreciated it being.
Or, hey, Sean, can you cover me for the next 2 hours? Sure. It didn't force them to have to work this set shift, and they were so much more satisfied with the way that they were being scheduled and the way communication was happening. Start texting as instead of, calling all the time. It's like my son, he's 17. If I want to get an answer, I text him.
Yeah.
And I know the phone's glued to his hand, so I know he can answer.
No, they don't know how that function works.
Text him and get the information I need. And why? Because that's his preferred method for communication. So I think we have to give up, the old point of view and start really taking a different viewing point in the way we're communicating, the way we're recognizing and rewarding, or even promoting. I mean, some people don't want to promote, or they promote, they leave one and go to another. And every 2 years or every 1 year, they end up moving up by going somewhere else.
Right.
I don't know how. I'd like to look into that whole retention thing. How do we retain?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a retention bonus. 18 months, you're going to get $500, or you're going to get whatever it might be. And I think those things work, but ultimately, if I'm not, first of all, I don't think people quit companies. I think they quit supervisors.
That's an interesting way of putting it. Yes.
And if you're not happy or satisfied with the person that you're reporting to, or you don't feel like you're getting, adequate communication, I just don't think you're going to have a lot of help in retaining those employees, unless we start understanding the employee and what do they need, what would they like to see,
right,
in terms of how we communicate and how we schedule and how we,
Yeah, it's interesting. I was talking to the person Emma, who's producing this podcast for us in the background, and we were discussing just how it's changed. Even at least I've seen this in the last 10, 15 years, where everyone isn't going to the office 9 to 5. Some are going 7:30 to 3:30. Some are going 10 to 6, and I don't feel like that. The world stops spinning. I don't feel like business shut down. And that doesn't seem like that big of a deal. But yet it's made so many, it seems to me that the younger generation seems to appreciate coming in earlier. I don't. But it seems to work.
And there's a lot of, even at Southwest, they just got completely flexible with everybody. You want to work 4 10-hour days? Great. Mm-hmm. You want to work 6 to whatever? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You want to come in later and work till, as long as you aren't, in operational, if you're a dispatcher, you need to be aware.
Yeah. If you're flying the plane.
If you're a mechanic, you need to be there overnight so you can give, do the C check. But if I'm an administrative assistant and I want to work 4 10-hour days and be off Friday or Monday or whenever, why not? As long as I get the same, production. And the same thing I think is with working remotely. I know there's some people who's putting a hard stop saying, nope, you're coming back in the office, period. But if you think about it, I don't have to have childcare. I don't have to have a pet sitter. I don't have to,
waste an hour driving.
Yeah, an hour each way. Mm-hmm. And plus, if I want to load the dishwasher on my lunch break, I can. As long as I'm being productive, I do think it's good to have connection.
Right.
And whether that's a quarterly thing or hopefully more often than that, maybe a monthly thing where, but I know people, they just don't want to have to carry their computer back and forth, and they don't want to have to, okay, then don't require that.
Right.
Just have an office day where you're just connecting with your coworkers or whatever it might be. And so I think it's going to be an interesting, a continual shift. Mm-hmm. And I think as more new people come into the workforce, it's going to continue to shift. But I just think if we can celebrate that,
right,
and not make it problematic, and okay, that's what you want to do, then we can make that work.
Yeah, it seems to me like it's never looked at as an opportunity. It's always looked at as butting heads versus, let's look at this from a different point of view. And maybe they're onto something.
Well, I like what Starbucks. If you work 20 hours, you get benefits. That's a lot of people want to work there for that reason. Yeah. If there's 5 stores around you, you can pick up shifts at different stores. They make it so easy to want to work there, and I think they put a pretty good cultural wrap on that too. I think they treat people fairly, and if they don't, then they close all their stores and have training around it. Yeah. But so I think more. I don't know if the word progressive is the right word.
Yeah, but I understand what you're saying.
A little more open-minded, a little more maybe progressive, and then listen. This what you tell me. What do you want? What do you need? How do we make this work for you, the employee? And listen to the customer. Is this working for our customer? And because ultimately we've got to shape our values and create our values so that they are shaping that culture. And that should be, I think, very customer centric. But there's 2 customers: the external customers and the internal customers. And if you don't take care of the internal customer, they're not going to take care of the external customer.
Right.
And I truly believe in that. But I think it's going to look different. I think it's going to continue to look different. And as a matter of fact, I'm trying to put my brain around what's next in this. Doing some think tanks with. There's actually a group in Texas called the Culture Think Tank. Okay. And I've recently affiliated with them, and we just have these incredible discussions about what is going on, how do we measure productivity, how do we measure anxiety, how do we measure all these different things. And it's really interesting when you start looking at what's causing the frustration or what's causing the anxiety, and what can we do about that? And I think there's going to be some interesting work that comes out of. There's a group of us that come together, and they call it the Culture Think Tank. So it's fun to be a part of it.
That sounds good, and I'd love to. We'll have to have you back on when you guys have solved all these problems, so that we can be the ones to share. Because I am as fascinated with it as you are, just to see how, like you said, people have to adapt. It's got to be a flexible type thing versus this is the way we've always done it.
Well, there's some really interesting and smart people in that group, and you might want to interview them as well, because they're a really talented group.
Sounds great. Jason, I can't thank you enough for coming on here and adding another 20 minutes or so to your day after speaking up there. Please rate, review, and subscribe. To do that, go to the iTunes podcast or Spotify app on your phone and search for Unpacked with PMMI.